Order, please. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. My name is Susan LeBlanc, and I am the MLA for Dartmouth North, and my pronouns are she, her. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone to put your phones on silent, and if there is a need to leave the building, we will leave through the Granville Street doors and meet up at the Art Gallery courtyard. I think I'm in the right direction. I'm going to ask the committee members to introduce themselves first, please, with your name, constituency, and pronoun. And I'll begin with the member here on my left.
Good morning, folks. Marco McLeod, Pictou West, he, him.
Good morning and welcome, Tom Taggart, MLA Taggart or Tom.
Good morning, Tim Mouth at Bedford Basin, he, him, or Tim.
Diane Timmons, Victoria the Lakes, and it's she, her.
Lisa Lachance, Halifax, Little Sable Island, they, them.
Good morning, Derek Mumberkett, MLA for Sydney Member 2, he, him.
Ian Rankin, Timberley Prospect, he, him.
Thank you very much. And we also have officials with us from the Office of the Auditor General, the Legislative Counsel Office, and Legislative Committees Office. And on today's agenda, we have officials with us from Build Nova Scotia, Department of Health and Wellness, Nova Scotia Health, and PCL Constructors Inc. Before I ask the witnesses to introduce yourselves, I'm going to just remind folks how the committee works, where when we get into the questioning, I will call on people. You need to allow me to say your name before you begin talking, and if you need to, if you're in question, the red light on your microphone will come on. You don't need to adjust your microphones. And also, oh my gosh. Oh yeah, please don't be offended if I cut you off. I have to call order at the end of 20 minutes, so it may feel abrupt, but I will try to massage it. So I will ask the witnesses to introduce yourselves, please, with your name, your title or your role, and your pronouns, please. And we'll begin here with David Benoit.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning. David Benoit, President, Chief Executive Officer, Build Nova Scotia, he, him, il, lui.
Good morning. I'm John Volcko with PCL Constructors. I'm our Vice President of Corporate Development there. Pronouns are he, him.
Good morning. Geoff Gatien, Associate Deputy Minister with the Department of Health and Wellness. Pronouns he, him.
Dana MacKenzie, Deputy Minister of Health and Wellness, she, her.
Good morning. I'm Karen Oldfield. I'm the Interim President and CEO at Nova Scotia Health.
Good morning, Derek Spinney. I am the Vice President of Corporate Services, Infrastructure, and Chief Financial Officer at Nova Scotia Health, and my pronouns are he and him. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, and we'll go to the second row.
Good morning. My name's Paul Martin, and I'm the Senior Vice President and General Counsel of Plenary Americas, and my pronouns are he, him.
Thank you very much. Ms. Oldfield, I just want to say that it's difficult to hear you in the room because there's a lot of ambient noise, and so if you can just be sure to speak right into the microphone, that would be helpful. Okay, so I will invite Mr. Benoit to begin making opening remarks, and then I'll call on the next people. So, Mr. Benoit, if you'd like to begin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, and thank you for the invitation and opportunity to be here. Madam Chair, I want to start by acknowledging that it's my honor to lead an incredibly talented, public service-focused organization. I have the joy of working with an innovative, creative, and responsive team every single day. Being trusted to deliver on some of the most complex and challenging projects that bring great value to Nova Scotians today and for years to come is a responsibility that I and my team take very seriously. Value for Nova Scotians is where we're focused day over day. I'm delighted to be joined with the Department of Health and Wellness and Nova Scotia Health and welcoming our construction partners, PPH, or the Consortium of Plenary and PCL. It's within this context that I'm privileged to speak to you about the QEII Halifax Infirmary Expansion Project and the June 2020 report of the Auditor General. On behalf of the dedicated healthcare infrastructure teams at Build Nova Scotia and Nova Scotia Health, I'm proud to share with the committee that all 5 of the Auditor's General recommendations are either in process of being addressed or completed. The outstanding recommendations cannot be completed until 2027 or when the construction is complete. I assure the committee and Nova Scotians that these will be addressed just as they were with the opening of the Bayers Lake Community Outpatient Centre. With the Halifax Infirmary project now in the main construction phase, Nova Scotians are another step closer to a new, modern, acute care tower with more beds, operating rooms, and a new, larger emergency department. 2 weeks ago, the first 2 cranes arrived, with 2 more arriving this summer. In May, crews started pouring the foundation, and by December, the concrete structure will rise to the main floor, marking a significant milestone. With construction accelerating, so is the demand for skilled trades to deliver the largest healthcare project ever undertaken in Atlantic Canada. In addition to leveraging the trades from the local Nova Scotia market, we are working with our partners to develop apprenticeship opportunities. We're also expanding the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program that we launched in Cape Breton, working to ensure we simultaneously build the workforce. This project reflects on our unwavering commitment to rapidly deliver strategic infrastructure that provides service and great value to all Nova Scotians. I look forward to your questions. Thank you, merci.
Merci, Monsieur Benoit. Then I will move on to Deputy MacKenzie, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to the committee members. The Halifax Infirmary Expansion Project is a game changer for Nova Scotia. For patients, it will provide more access to care, more services, and a larger emergency department. The expanded HI will include a 14-story tower, 216 beds, 16 operating rooms, a 48-bed intensive care unit, and an emergency department that is nearly twice the size of the current one. For staff, it will be a modern, state-of-the-art facility to work in, and some staff and services from the aging VG site will move into the new facility. For recruitment, we know healthcare staff want to work in a collaborative, contemporary, high-tech facility. So the HI has the added benefit of being a recruiting magnet for doctors, nurses, and other healthcare staff. For the economy, the project will be a significant boost. The province's agreement with Plenary PCL Health includes the construction of the 14-floor tower and its maintenance over 30 years. This will provide construction employment for hundreds of trades and construction workers, and it will increase the staff complement at the HI once complete. Today, the site is bustling with workers, pouring concrete, breaking and removing rock, and looking up as cranes swing into action as the main construction phase gets underway. It will get busier and busier as the project proceeds over the next 6 years, with nearly 1,000 workers on site at its peak. We look forward to our discussions today and your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy MacKenzie, and we'll move on to Karen Oldfield, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Great. Just make sure. Ladies and gentlemen, for the 2025 fiscal year, the QEII Health Sciences Centre saw more than 1.1 million people. On any given day, there were over 1,000 inpatients. Roughly 2,800 people visited on-site clinics, and over 200 people arrived at the emergency department. This is specialized, complex care. It's often life-changing and certainly can be life-saving. But many of our facilities there supporting this care are ready for renewal. The project represents a major step forward. The new acute care tower will expand inpatient and surgical care, add more efficient diagnostic and treatment facilities, and house a larger emergency department, which is built for today's and tomorrow's volumes. We're now approaching 75% completion of the design, and that work is being shaped by those who use the spaces every day. So we've engaged with physicians, nurses, allied health professionals, and support staff. It's their insights that are shaping everything from the way patients will move through the spaces to the placement of outlets in operating rooms to the design of staff break spaces. It's these conversations that help us build a workplace that attracts and retains the people that we need, one that fosters collaboration, innovation, and pride. The bricks and the mortar are important and can't come fast enough, but what matters most is what happens inside. The new acute care tower will support the ongoing evolution of healthcare, making space for the tools, the tech, the systems that help care teams do their best work. Things like one person, one record, robotic surgeries, expanded hyperbaric treatment, and systems that track and manage surgical instruments. All of this will support safer, more efficient, and more connected care for patients. We are shaping a space that reflects what matters most to our patients and to our providers, and that includes forming a joint working group to guide the naming process for the new tower, and that's an exciting step forward, making this space feel real and rooted in community. A project of this scale takes commitment and collaboration, so we're very fortunate to be guided by the voices of care providers and supported by local, by national, and international experts. Together, we're building a system that supports the well-being of both those who receive care and those who provide it. And that future is coming into view now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will begin questioning, but I first want to just welcome MLA Wong. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Brian Wong, MLA, Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. And we'll begin questioning with MLA Lachance, please.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. It certainly is. I know someone referenced, I mean, this is for all Nova Scotians. It'll also probably be a real important place for all of the Maritimes, really, in terms of expertise and services. And I get to see it built every day. So whether I'm walking, riding, or like biking or driving by, I think I see it every day, at least once, maybe twice, maybe 4 times. So it is a busy spot. Lots is happening, and so it's very exciting. And I know lots of Nova Scotians have lots of questions about it. When we look back at the 2020 audit, the redevelopment plan, the business case, didn't include a stakeholder engagement plan, and I appreciate Ms. Oldfield's comments about the engagement of care providers and folks on that side of the system. But I think, when I look at recommendation 1.1 from that 2020 audit, I really think about what stakeholders mean is it's actually like, users, potential patients, it's folks actually in this community, in my community, and it's also, people who come from all over Nova Scotia to seek care. So my understanding is that currently there's no plan to undertake that sort of broader community engagement, a stakeholder engagement plan. And I'm wondering, perhaps Mr. Benoit, you referenced being on track for all the recommendations from the audit. Can you talk a bit about what you're doing in terms of stakeholder engagement, and then maybe we'll have a difference of opinion on what that constitutes, but I would love to hear more about the work that's happening.
Mr. Benoit.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the question. I think if I could just start by saying that, the stakeholder is a very broad term, and so we tried to apply it as broadly as we could as we started to develop this plan, and as we started to look to see how we would implement it. And I think CEO Oldfield mentioned that, and certainly one of those groups would be the care providers. One of the consistent kind of lessons learned from across the country, especially around healthcare infrastructure, is that the providers never seem to be engaged enough, and they never seem to have their voice there, and they never get a chance to, or they rarely, or it's haphazardly that they get engaged. So This project took a different approach. It said, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get user groups, and there's 42 of them, 42 user groups. So that's not 42 people, that's 42 user groups. Of those user groups, there's many, many more people, mainly on the clinical side, that provide service that we have engaged throughout the process. We continue to engage, and I'll tell you a little bit about that because it's really exciting stuff that we're doing on that front. And so we're getting that first voice, that lived experience. Now we also, through the hospital, and they also have a patient advocacy group that we have worked with, and then. In addition to that, you know, we're taking, you know, steps, and we have already done our first community engagement. That was done back in, let me see now, March the 4th, if I remember correctly. And so we invited the community that was in the area. We advertised it on, you know, all the usual mediums. We also did drops of postcards to the people that are in the area in order to invite them in. And we had a significant, I was there for the whole evening, and we had a significant turnout from the community. And they weren't just all local. They were, you know, because the word got out and other people came in, partly to find out about what was going on, partly to find out how it was going to affect their neighborhood, partly to find out kind of what the plan is. And so that was highly, you know, from our team's perspective, it was highly successful. I was at the entrance, so I greeted every single person as they came in, and I talked with them if they wanted to talk as they left, and if you know, if they had any feedback for me, I took it. The feedback predominantly, with the exception of maybe 2 people, was just it was a really great project. They're really in favor of it, and they really want to support the effort. The biggest question, I guess, that I got afterwards was, can I walk through the facility instead of having to walk around it if I live in the neighborhood? And so that was interesting. Interesting question. But we're going to continue to do that engagement as we go. And I think the other really important thing that I would like Nova Scotians to know is that on the scrim, so the scrim is that, you know, the banner that sits on the fence line. On the scrim, we're going to have a QR code. I believe it's there now, but I didn't get a chance to actually drive by and check it this morning, so I will check. But if it isn't there now, it will be shortly. And that QR code, anyone with a phone can just like any QR code, you can scan it and you can find out exactly what's going on with the project, up-to-date kind of information. And that way we're trying to be transparent and trying to engage the public. The last point I guess I'd just bring up is about the user group engagements. So the user group isn't just we sit them in a room and when we talk at them. I mean, initially it started that way because that's the way you kind of have to work in order to develop the plan. But 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, we actually had sort of a floor plan set out. And so then they kind of walked through that floor plan. About a couple months ago, we actually had constructed specific service clinical spaces in cardboard so that people
Order,
could...
please. Oh. Mr. Benoit, MLA Lachance would like to move on to another question, so I'll call on MLA Lachance.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I am sorry to interrupt. I do have a number of questions that I want to get to during the time allocated, but I guess to follow up on what you've provided. So, you know, when I think of stakeholder engagement, I mean there are standards and processes for public participation or stakeholder engagement. If we think about the International Association for Public Engagement, there's actually a process. And what that would look like is rather than sort of one-offs that are, you know, I mean, valuable for the neighborhood, absolutely, but, you know, that are, you know, quite random, really. I mean, public participation that truly engages stakeholders, you know, is ongoing, it's transparent, there are terms of references, there are commitments, it's predictable, and I think, you know, the user groups, that's really important, the community around, but you know, I think that we could be doing a much better job for probably the single biggest investment we're going to make in Nova Scotia for a very long time, in making sure that Nova Scotians can get the information they need and that they feel that it's transparent. So just quickly, right now, if I if I'm at my stepfather's home in Western Head, Queens County, and I'm curious about how I can get engaged and find out more about what's happening to this provincial resource, what do I do? Where do I go?
Mr. Benoit.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. I guess I would say that you can go to our website, buildnovascotia.ca, and on there you'll find everything. It's linked to the healthcare website, and you can find out about the building, you can find about the construction, the clinical, the construction, and you can do that any time of day or night.
MLA Lachance.
Yeah, I think what the other thing that Nova Scotians would really like to be able to see is, much more detail around the step-by-step build, the checks and balances, so to understand with essentially a process that resulted in one provider, one contractor, how they can be assured that they're, Nova Scotians got the best deal possible when it was maybe $2 billion, are going to get the best deal possible when it's $7.4 billion. I think, transparency and public procurement is so important. I guess I would encourage sort of more than the basic website, and to consider how Nova Scotians can be part of that. And I guess on that question, we only had one bidder in the end, and I'm wondering how are you monitoring as Build Nova Scotia, because this is a massive project over many, many years, and as we've already seen from 2020 to now, many things happen in the world that change the conditions under which you're working. How do you monitor if we're getting value for money for this $7.4 billion project?
Mr. Benoit.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again for the question. I think, it's a really important point that I hope that, and I've said before, and I hope that people understand exactly what happened. So it was a open procurement process that we started with. We down selected to 2 bidders. Those 2 bidders were then in competition with each other in order to deliver the facility. As the MLA has pointed out, conditions changed in the market so significantly that both of those bidders independently came to the project team to say, it isn't achievable what you're looking for, so we need to find another way. And so we did. In the end, one of the bidders withdrew, but that doesn't make it a sole source, or it doesn't make it an LP, or it doesn't make it any of those other terms. It's still a competitive process. The competitive tension, though, it isn't just between 2 competitors. There's competitive tension as well inside the competition between tradespeople and between corporations or businesses that are looking to actually build on this project. So that competitive tension remained. And of course, working with our partners who were building this, my team, I can assure you, they spent, and I'm sure Mr. Volcko would attest the same, is that we had very long nights, that we went back and forth on very specific, there's 1,000 things that we could talk about, and we talked about every single one of them. And so I'm comfortable that we got value for money, but you don't have to take my word for it. There's a document called the Value for Money, which is a standard document for this type of procurement, and that's standard in the industry, which will be, as we've said repeatedly, it will be available to the public. We've committed to that. It is being finalized now, and the value for money demonstrates that the province, through this procurement method, got a significant value out of this project. I think as well, it's really important to remember that this is, now that the contract is signed, a firm fixed price for the items that are in it. And that our construction partners, as much as pressure as we will apply, and we'll apply lots, and he's not surprised by that, his investors, their investors, the people who are investing in this project, will also supply. The last...
Order, please. Okay. We have such limited time. MLA Lachance, please.
I guess a quick question that both Mr. Benoit and Mr. Volcko could answer. So, I mean, costs are continually increasing, cost of labor, impact of tariffs on steel, et cetera, et cetera. Are you confident that the cost will stay within the current $4.5 billion construction price tag?
Mr. Benoit.
Thank you. Just if I could just add the last point that I was going to say is that the investors are confident in that this is a good deal as well, because we got an incredible interest rate that was not expected, and lots of interest in this project. As far as the cost, so as I said, it's firm fixed. So we, for the items that are covered, so there's always contingencies that may arise that are built into the program. Again, by having done the work to dig, we've reduced a lot of that risk. So a lot of that was known rather than just estimated. So there again is another measure of assurance. And then, as to the MLA's point about tariffs, I mean, nobody can predict what the impact will be there. So, that will necessitate, I'm sure, a discussion, but that doesn't mean that the price will go up. That just may be we look for different sources, or we find other ways to do it. But those are the discussions that will continue on as we develop through this really long 7-year build.
Order, please. MLA LaChance.
Thank you. And I know I posed a question to Mr. Volcko, but I'm just going to actually just add to that question. I'm just, we're rushing through time. So I'm wondering if you can talk a bit about two things. So one is Mr. Benoit talked about the negotiations that you undertake with subcontractors to ensure that I understand that we're getting value for money. So suppliers, contractors, labor, that sort of thing. Can you, how is that process set out? Is that process transparent? Could Nova Scotians see, when there's a contract being issued or a need for a different provider? Can we see that there's multiple people being considered, or how is that process? And then I also want to ask you about workforce. So. But I think I'll pause. I'll actually just leave that first question around subcontractors.
So, Mr. Benoit, on the subcontractor question.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Volcko?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the question. As Mr. Benoit pointed out, we are on a fixed price, fixed schedule contract. So we know how much it's going to cost Nova Scotians, and we know when it's going to be turned over for occupancy activities. Through that process, we do a combination of procurement. Some of it is competitively tendered, some of it remains to be competitively tendered, and some of it is based on negotiations with trusted trade partners who we know can guarantee cost certainty and date certainty. And if those are available at some point, I'm not sure what the provincial process is to get those out to the public, but of course we'll cooperate with anything that is a requirement there. Does that answer your question on that?
MLA LaChance?
Yeah, I mean, that is very helpful. I think that, I think, of course, Nova Scotians are reassured that you're within a fixed budget and a fixed timeline. At the same time, we all understand that, of course, conditions change. So I think what Nova Scotians really will want over the next few years is just step by step, that there's an assurance that we're getting the best value for money, and that those processes roll out in a way that's transparent and accountable. I wanted to ask you about the workforce. So at this point, can you estimate what percentage of the workforce will be from Nova Scotia? And I'm also wondering if you're working with goals or objectives around increasing diversity on the work site. So how are you working to increase women and gender diverse folks on the work site, African Nova Scotians, newcomers, Indigenous folks? How are you supporting that on the work site? And do you have specific goals?
Mr. Volcko.
Thank you again for the question. We do have very specific goals. So I'm going to start at the top. Our overall workforce is going to be around 850 to 1,000 workers at peak. To answer your question around that, we suspect that about 2/3 of those will be local or local to Nova Scotia. There are some key trades that are coming from out of province. Our formwork trade is one of those, where there's just not sufficient skilled labor for that scope to do the work. We are very aware of the benefit of the project to Nova Scotians and want to do the best for Nova Scotia. One example of that is one of our trade partners from Ontario has actually subcontracted his scope of work to a consortium of 3 local firms. So that provides a benefit to increase and help to get our local content up. It also helps to utilize the workforce from several different resource pools. With respect to the underrepresented group, we do have a fairly detailed community benefits plan that is still being, it's in draft version, being reviewed at the moment. It should be out shortly, but our overall goal is to have 10% of our workforce from underrepresented constituents. And then in addition to that, we have a very aggressive program with respect to apprenticeships. Those apprenticeships are likely new graduates, new out of school, new out of trade school. We want those workers to be trained at the highest level possible and then remain in Nova Scotia so that there's a legacy of a skilled workforce here.
Thank you. Mr. Benoit, did you have a quick addition?
Yeah, just if I could just add that we're working with the Labor Skills and Immigration, the Apprenticeship Agency, the Construction Trade Council, and of course our partners in order to develop that apprenticeship. The idea here is we start an apprentice on the site, gets to be a journey person, then perhaps they can get to mentoring. We think we have time for that, and so the 10% that Mr. Volcko talked about, I mean, that's the minimum. We're looking to hopefully even improve that, but we'll progress that as quickly, and we're working on that right now.
Thank you. MLA Lachance, please.
So just very quickly, in terms of the 1/3 of folks that you think will need to come from outside Nova Scotia and that we just don't have that skill set here, have there been discussions with either Construction Council or NSCC in order to actually provide that training in Nova Scotia so that we can actually fill those roles?
Order, please. You won't be able to answer that, but maybe the next questioner will allow that. So I'll move on to MLA Rankin, please.
What's that? Thank you, Madam Chair. And that is a good question. Maybe I'll just ask it first to rephrase it a little bit to PCL, and the government can comment. But PCL is engaged in a lot of large contracts across the province and some neighboring provinces. And so I was wondering your confidence level on labor availability to make sure that you have the labor to actually fulfill the obligations of this very large project. And what is the province doing to ensure that NSCC has more seats for people? It's given this is a multi-year project, that we can graduate more people, and there's long wait lists for a lot of these trades in demand.
Mr. Volcko?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Rankin. As we were going through the bid phase, one of our major risks was labor availability and skilled labor to that point. That's why our strategy is a combination of bringing people from out of province for those periods of that particular scope. Again, we have a focus on using local and creating a skilled workforce long term. With respect to Nova Scotia Community College, I'm somewhat aware of how they operate. I have been on their board for a couple of sessions, a couple of terms years ago, and I know that they are a very nimble and responsive organization. So if we, or when we get to work with them to say, okay, we need X number of carpenters in 2027 or 2028, they would be nimble enough to work with us to try and hit some of those objectives in a variety of scopes that they provide training in across the province.
MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And what I'm really curious about is going back to the beginning of this and the government's mandate. Because these issues around labor availability have been exacerbated, we've had interest rates climb. And back when the beginning of this mandate, it was said that the population projections were not accurate enough to move forward with the original plan of the $2 billion estimate. And that was a federal census by Statistics Canada. We have similar staff that work on this, that are working on it now. And I will say that COVID obviously had an impact, but I wonder if there ever was a specific cost-benefit analysis to moving forward with the original plan right away before some of these externalities got a little out of control, to say, let's build what the size and scope was now in 2021, and then accommodate another tower or a modification to the build while under construction, either on-site or off-site, so that we could at least try to have the bill up sooner and not see these continuous delays and cost increases on the estimate. Was there ever a scenario where we looked at, let's just get on with this work so that we can try to get that VG torn down in 2022 as planned?
Mr. Benoit?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the question. I guess I would just start by going back that, you know, it was the people who were in the competition that were trying to build it that came to us and said, this isn't achievable, so we need to relook at how we can deliver. And so we started to look at, well, what is the best way forward? And you know, the decision was made, a courageous decision was made to say, okay, let's stop and let's relook at how we plan, and then let's move forward. And so that's exactly what we did. The team, you know, worked very hard to make sure that we get the most critical elements delivered first. And so that is what's incorporated into what the new acute care tower will have. As it relates to the labor availability, just on the last point, as it relates to NSCC, so the Construction Trade Council and the Apprenticeship Agency are in discussions with the Nova Scotia Community College. And we're in discussions with them. So we are working to try and to bridge that gap. We think that using the underrepresented communities, by engaging the underrepresented communities, we'll be able to achieve our targets of apprentices, and it'd be a really positive thing for Nova Scotian overall.
MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I note that you said there was a kind of a stop. You said, let's stop and let's try to figure out where we're going with this. Redesign basically is what happened. And later, though, the Minister of Health said that we need to move forward as things continue to get more expensive. And I would submit that that was happening back in 2021. Is that not an admission that at the time was of the essence right away for the new government to get to work and begin the construction sooner before inflationary issues started to come on hard in 2022? Because I'm talking about 2021, and it wasn't until late 2022 when the tender missed the deadline due to, quote, market conditions. So there was a pause on the project, and I'm going back to what the minister said, that we now have to get on with building it. So I want to ask the question, was that not an admission that this project should have got off the ground sooner?
Mr. Benoit.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. I can't comment on admission or not. That's not my role. What I can say is that, you know, the team needed the time in order to redesign and to make sure that we could achieve and deliver an actual project and support to the healthcare system where it was most critically needed. And that's exactly what the team did. We also took the unusual step, which turned out very favorably for us, and it is a bit of a Nova Scotia innovation, I guess I'll say, by digging into the site almost immediately. And that actually has done a number of things, one of which was to advance the project by almost a year by having that work done. But even perhaps more important than that is it gave certainty to what we were going to find in the site, and it gave certainty. One of the biggest, scariest things you can do in any construction project is dig into the ground, because you never know what you're going to find. We know we have porous slate. We know that the site was used for various things over its lifetime, but what was actually in there? And so as a result, we were able to demystify that and de-risk it, which actually lowered the price. The other thing it did was, and I'll go back to our investors, when this thing went out for investment in February for investors to bid, the Poor's and Standard & Poor's and Moody, thank you. You know, the way that they talked about the project was that this project is going to be delivered, and that the provincial team knew what they were doing, the construction team knew what they were doing. These are their words, not mine. And as a result, it generated such interest that we were able to get a much lower interest rate than any other project of a similar size, and certainly lower than the people who are experts in this field, and I am not, expected. And so that also saved funding cost to the project. I think one of the things for me, though, that really stuck out to me was the confidence level that these experts had in our approach and in our ability to deliver the project that we have.
MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A confidence level that only one company at the end of the day was interested in continuing on with the tender. So I want to ask a question around why the other proponents did decide that it wasn't feasible for them under the parameters that the province had in the tender. So we had Ellis Don drop out of the process, and fees paid to some of these entities for the cost they incurred. But what was the province willing to give up in terms of leverage on the contract to keep PCL interested in? It's an unenviable position to be dealing, notwithstanding the subcontract tendering process. But why was PCL still interested, and what was the reason specifically that the other companies felt like it wasn't in it for them? And then finally, just in the interest of time, who handles the cost overruns on this project? Because the best thing about design, build, operate, maintain is the transfer of that risk. So just wanted to be clear that there is still significant transfer risk to the successful proponent on this project.
Do you want to take the second part first, and then so we'll go to Mr. Benoit, and then we'll probably go to Mr. Volcko. Mr. Benoit, on the cost overruns.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. I guess I would just go back to it's a firm fixed price and schedule. So for the delivery, there's, you know, I don't know how else to say it. The cost is known, and we're going to pay that. If things arise like tariffs or hurricanes or, you know, unexpected, unforeseeable things, there are clauses in the contract which allow for a conversation to happen. Again, that doesn't automatically mean that it's an increase in cost. It means that there's a conversation that takes place between the constructor. That's in all contracts, especially of this complexity or magnitude. In terms of, you know, actually, I can't remember part of the question, but it triggered in the Standard & Poor and Moody's description of the project, it actually addressed the question that it's a firm fixed price. So the cost overrun, oh, sorry, I know, it was the risks, sorry. It actually addressed both, but the risks in particular, they said that the province maintained the risk with the constructor. So those risks that would naturally normally be associated with the transference retained with that. As to why the other...
Order, please. I think I'll move on to Mr. Volcko to address Mr. Rankin's first part of the question. Do you need to reiterate it, or are we good? Good? Yeah, Mr. Volcko.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I have been involved with the project for about 3 years, and it was right at that time that it went from a 2-horse race to a 1-horse race. We procure mega hospitals, mega projects, billion-dollar hospitals across Canada. That's one of the things that we do. It's one of the things that we're very good at. Our relationship with Plenary Health and my counterpart sitting in the next row, is very strong. It has 20 years of history, multiple projects, billions and billions of dollars of successful deliveries. So going back to that time that you mentioned, I think it was 2002, going to the 1-horse race, we were interested in the project, but we had to make sure that we could get to success. That's why we went to the province to say that the scope is too much, the costs are increasing. We have to relook at that if we want this to be a reality. As I mentioned, the consortium of PPH, which is PCL and Plenary, we are the design builder, Plenary are the financer, and we have a third-party operator as part of that. Our competitors had a different strategy, and if I recall correctly, perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, our competitor at the time, they have an internal financing company within their umbrella of companies, so they were going to design, build it, and finance it. And it's my understanding that with the cost increase as it occurred, it went beyond their capability to finance that or their appetite for the risk on the design build and on the financing. I could also add to the second part of that question on the cost overrun, if you'd like.
MLA Rankin?
Sure, and I'm also interested in, Mr. Benoit, you commented on basically mutually agreed upon extra expenses that could happen if a hurricane happened, but I would submit that there are much more, I think, practical reasons for change orders that happen from time to time, even in a modest $1 billion of $5–10 million. You see that with hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million of change orders that come through, especially with the technical nature of the equipment and everything that's needed in a hospital. This is the largest infrastructure project ever in our province. So I'd ask the question, beyond just ordinary cost overruns, what are we budgeting for in terms of those change orders within the project, and what other extra costs are we looking at? Because my understanding is the deconstruction of the VG has a cost that's not baked into the budget of $7 billion for the project. What is the budget for the deconstruction and removal of the C&D material, including tipping fees, so that taxpayers have a full picture of what we're going to incur?
Is that for Mr. Benoit?
Sure.
Mr. Benoit, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. Certainly, there's lots in there. I guess I would just kind of restate that I didn't mean to imply that we had mutually agreed costs or anything like that. That's not the case. What I meant to say was unexpected, unforecasted, unforeseeable arisings that may happen in the project. Those are the things that would get addressed in the contract. As far as, the equipment, that is yet, like, we've got a budget. Obviously, there's about $1 billion for equipment, furniture and effects, that kind of thing. But that is something that we'll get to when we get a little bit further into the project. And of course, we want to make sure that we have, and we'll be working with our NSH colleagues on that, and with all those user groups that we were talking about in terms of what the need is and what the best technology is. We started this, when we started this project, much more advanced than similar projects. What I mean by that is we actually had 50%, almost, we're almost, as CEO Oldfield said, we're almost at 75% design development now. Normally these projects kick off with somewhere around 30%, so we were already at 50% before we even kicked off the project. Again, that helps assure costs, it helps control costs, it helps to make sure that we stay within budget. As far as, change orders that may come up, there is no reasonable way for me to even guess how that would happen, if or what they would be, what costs they might be, or even if they would occur. If we, I agree with the MLA that often these construction projects do have change orders. Those are usually in response, though, to real world situations, i.e. things that actually need to get changed in order to make sure the building provides the service that we're hoping that it will provide to the population. So sometimes it's about, changes in equipment or changes in layout or changes in, those kind of things often are related to change orders to help us mitigate that. And I didn't get a chance to talk about the mock-ups, which I think I'll just take a moment to talk about that now. We're building right now actual permanent, semi-permanent mock-ups so that clinicians can come in and say, okay, this is my space, where's my sink, where's my soap dispenser, where's this, where's that, and we can get that right so that we can then make sure that we don't replicate a problem right across the build when it's time to install that stuff. And we're doing that now, but that stuff won't be installed till, closer to the end of the project. And so we've
Order,
got
please. Sorry. MLA Rankin.
Yeah, my time's running out. I just maybe you can give some specific numbers on what has happened so far for change orders during the. You have 75% design ready. How much more are we spending? We have a hole in the ground. And again, what's the cost of the decommissioning of the existing asset there?
Mr. Benoit.
So thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the question. I don't have that information at my fingertips in terms of change orders, to my knowledge. So I wouldn't be able to comment on that. In terms of the demolition of the VG, that would be a whole separate project. That also has to do with what do you do with the site afterwards. So that question is really important before we just go. Well, first of all, it's being used, so we have to wait till it's no longer in use. Before we could even consider taking it down. But then what are you going to reuse it for? That actually is really an important question. The planning team, the master planning team for Central Zone is actually working.
Order,
on
please. MLA Rankin.
I'm just trying to get some specifics. Maybe you can give the cost of the money spent in the VG now for the new water treatment facility, new HVAC, new AC, and all these other expenses that are incurred on this building that's overdue for decommissioning.
You're looking down the hallway. Is there someone else better able to answer that? Mr. Spinney?
Thank you for the question. I might need some help from the MLA to repeat the question a little bit. So are you specifically asking about the Victoria General Campus or the Okay, right. So on our balance sheet, we always have decommissioning costs, which really just takes into account what's the cost to demolish the building. So we do account for that under our IFRS standards that the Auditor General here in her office here would be helping us with. But that's really quite basic, I would say, or rudimentary. It's really just to bring it down and what's the cost of that, get rid of the asbestos, et cetera, et cetera. What we don't know and what will be part of the master planning that was just out for tender, we've received the bids, we're working through that process right now, is what will we use that campus for? So we don't know the answer to that, and that's going to play obviously a really large impact on the cost of whatever we end up doing with it. So in some respects we have a cost, but it's much more rudimentary than I think what you're looking for, which is really what are we going to use that campus for in the future.
MLA Rankin.
Thank you, and I know I'm running out of time. I was just looking for some specifics on a full picture of costs in terms of taking down the tipping fees. I mean, asbestos, some of that stuff is not just sending to a regular landfill. So the more transparency on all these costs, the better off we'll be.
Order, please. Perhaps we can ask the clerk to follow up after the meeting and maybe get something written to the committee on those costs. So that's the cost of the deconstruction of the VG. And also Mr. Rankin asked for the costs of the new HVAC system, the new water system in the current system of the VG hospital. So I'm going to move on to MLA Timmins, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for coming today. I'm going to move on to more towards the service area and what we're looking at in the future. What services are moving to the acute care facility? Are there any services that are entirely being moved there, or is it an expansion of the existing services?
Ms.
Sorry.
Oldfield. Is that?
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
okay.
Yeah.
Karen Oldfield, please.
Sure, thank you, I'll start. So there's an expansion, as we know, with the ER, which is doubling in size, with our operating rooms, which will also be a number more operating rooms, as well as beds. So in terms of, so those are all being expanded. And then a number of items are being moved from the VG, but some of that moving is happening now. So I'm going to ask, I will ask Mr. Spinney to talk about some of the items, some of the clinics and so forth that are being diverted from the VG now.
Mr. Spinney, please.
Thank you for the question. So one of the things that became very apparent when we started revisiting our infrastructure in totality is what doesn't need to be in a hospital. And so that's a cornerstone of what is now in the More Faster Infrastructure Plan. And so to that end, we've started to move things out of the Victoria General. In fact, some of the words we would use is decant what we can and fortify what we can't. So get out what we can. And so to that end, blood collection, these sorts of services we're trying to get out. We've also taken the decision a few years ago to start to use a private partner to ensure that Nova Scotians can get their cataract surgeries more quickly. So on the 4th floor, for instance, at the VG, where our eye clinic is, a lot of people are coming in for service there. They don't need to come to the peninsula, so let's get them off of the peninsula, which they do near the Armdale Rotary now quite successfully. So those are just some of the examples of getting things out that don't need to be there. In addition, some of the things that won't be going over and will be of interest to everyone as we get through this master planning process that we've now started is what do we do with cancer care? So cancer care, for instance, is in the Dixon building at the VG. That is not part of the new development that's being built right now. So where should that be provisioned? How should that be provisioned? Of course, I don't have the answer to that, but that's a really good example of things that aren't going over that need to be taken care of for all the reasons that we know about that campus. So that's the upcoming work that we're undertaking now.
Emily Timmins.
What is the master plan, and how will the different hospital staff department be able to review any changes and ensure that service delivery projections will be met upon capacity, please?
Mr. Spinney, please.
That's a great question, thank you. And we had a similar question earlier about how do we make sure that the right people are engaged, right? So we're building this for many stakeholders. So how do we make sure that all of those stakeholders are engaged with the process? So there are, I think the count is 41 different user groups that are actually put together to help do exactly what you're saying. Where are we at with the progress? What does that look like? And so on. So there's different phases that we go through. There's master programming, which determines what kinds of things do you need. Then there's the master planning, which is what we're undertaking right now. And through that process, there's 2 check-ins or 2 reports due, one later this fall, just as a progress report, if you will, and then the final in November of 2026. So there's many different project management steps through there, different internal gates as we go through it, and the establishment of all of these user groups as well, and as you would expect, terms of reference and governing governance committees that we go through too.
Emily Timmins.
To that, how would that be introduced to the community? You said the fall report. Would that be on the website or for updates for the committee?
Mr. Spinney, please.
Sorry, jumping ahead. Thank you for the question. So, yes, the overarching milestones of this, absolutely. The individual pieces of work that are being done will be with the teams as they go through it. So I'm not able to pre-conclude, I guess, what the best way to be able to share that with everyone, because as you can appreciate, it's an iterative work in progress. So we wouldn't want to say something publicly that the teams hadn't yet agreed on. So we need to let them do the work to make sure that we're well informed, and then absolutely we would be making that available.
Emily Timmins.
Thank you. I know some other colleagues want to ask some questions, so I'll move it on. Tim.
MLA Outfit, please.
Thank you, Chair. And Mr. Spinney, you might find it interesting that I just had cataract surgery and I didn't have to go to the VG to get it. Now I only need glasses to see my what I want to read. So that's what I will do. This is exciting and progressive time in Nova Scotia, and we know a lot of healthcare bills are occurring right now across the province. Probably this is for Deputy MacKenzie or for Ms. Oldfield. Can we explain how this project will work with other new builds and infrastructure upgrades to create a modern but integrated system? So how are all these new builds going to be integrated together to service our population? Good one for the deputy.
Deputy MacKenzie, please.
Thank you for the question. I think it touches on the idea of how it all fits together, and the central zone master planning work actually supplements, of course, and is part of the broader vision for the entire Central Zone region, not just, of course, the separate project of the Halifax Infirmary expansion project. So that work is really aimed at trying to address rapid population growth, shifting demographics, and of course the aging healthcare infrastructure. And that Central Zone master planning is the mechanism that will help us determine how it all fits together, for example, in the Central Zone. And of course, the Central Zone is a primary location for the provision of services to people from outside of the zone across Nova Scotia. So the Central Zone process, and I'll hand the microphone to CEO Oldfield to kind of elaborate on this with more detail, but it focuses on redeveloping and optimizing the key healthcare sites in the Halifax Regional Municipality, including Dartmouth General, the Nova Scotia Hospital Mental Health and Addictions Campus, and the Cobequid Community Healthcare Centre. So that scoping work and that planning is underway, and I think my colleague, Mr. Spinney, referred to it earlier. That's really the mechanism that will help us examine and make sure that what is delivered overall meets the needs. I'll hand the microphone now to CEO Oldfield.
Karen Oldfield, please.
Thank you. Yes. When we look at the Central Zone, it's really the hub or the cog at the center of the wheel. And so much comes off of it around the province, but also, as was mentioned earlier, even in Atlantic Canada. So that needs to contemplate all the moving pieces. And so, yes, the QE2 renewal, redevelopment, a key part of it, but also we look around the entire Central Zone. So Bayers Lake was an early part of the renewal and working really well. People are very, very happy with it and located in an excellent spot, you know, at the intersection. So it's of all the different highways, so it's working well. But equally, the Dartmouth General is an important piece, and even though it was expanded in contemplation, it needs further expansion just based on the population growth around the Dartmouth side of the harbour and beyond. So whether it's Eastern Passage, whether it's Cole Harbour, whether it's Porters Lake, and I mean, HRM, as you know, is a very big municipality. So we look at all of the assets, and you know, the way I analogize it is, if we take something like Twin Oaks in Musquodoboit, it is today to the Dartmouth General Hospital what the Dartmouth General used to be to the VG, and that is how the growth is going and how we're looking at it. So again, Twin Oaks is being looked at. Twin Oaks, what I like about it, not to mention the fact that it's in a very fast-growing area of the province between Porters Lake and that entire area. They also have land there, which is at a premium. So Twin Oaks is part of our planning process, Dartmouth General, as I said, and periodically you will see that we have opportunities to add to our land bank around the Dartmouth General, and when we have those opportunities, we take them, because we know there will be expansion there. And then we look at Cobequid, closer to your area, which, again, there is some land, but it's not as easily expanded as some of our other sites, which is a real pity because it's in a major population growth area of the province. So I would say that part of the master planning, I don't want to presuppose an outcome, but I would be shocked if there was not some indication of another major or regional hospital being required in the Central Zone over the course of the planning horizon. I'm not announcing that, I'm not saying that, I'm intuiting that. So we will see, and in a way comes back to MLA Rankin's question earlier of, you know, what were we looking at when we were trying to, you know, decide exactly what had to be happening. So the population growth in Metro and in HRM in particular, and just the population growth of the province, where almost half is here in this location, and the balance around rural Nova Scotia, makes it very necessary to figure out just how we're going to build out the Central Zone. And of course, the builds are only part of the problem, because then we go back to the staffing, the actual building, the timing, the budgeting, the forecasting. So what we're trying to do with the master plan is lay something out that we can start to get our heads around as a collective, as a system. So including our long-term care homes, where are they being built? How does that all fit into the grand equation? How does hospital at home fit in? Where does transitional care fit in? So it's not one thing, it is many parts of a 1,000-piece puzzle. And Derek Spinney is leading the master plan. So I don't know if you have anything further to add to that, Derek, but that's sort of where we are.
Mr. Elthit, would you like to hear from Mr. Spinney, or do you want to move on?
I think Mr. Taggart would like to start next, but not that we don't want to hear you, Mr. Spinney. But
We'll call on Mr. MLA Taggart, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm interested, I think this is to Mr. Benoit, so this is not our first, P3 building's been going on for some time. I recall in my own mind, when I first heard of P3s, how's that going to work? That was quite a few years ago, and who's going to pay in the end and all this stuff. But so you guys have had some, this is not new. You've had some experience, and I'm sure that every kind of every project has its challenges. You learn, so what did you learn looking back at other P3 projects? And more importantly, what did you learn that gave us the best shot maybe at meeting timelines and budgets and providing, building what, you felt or whoever felt was the best for province of Nova Scotia? So I guess lessons learned, What drove you in this direction?
Mr. Benoit?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the question. P3, lots of people have different experiences with P3, and some people will say it's the best thing, some people say it's the worst thing. It's neither the best nor the worst, in my opinion. It's what is appropriate for what you're trying to build. And so before we even got started, and before we take on these major projects, and this is a standard, we do what we call is a procurement method analysis. And so that started with this project as well. What was the best way to deliver this size, this magnitude, this complexity type of project? And so to do that, we actually rely on international consultants that have expertise not just in the P3 field, but also have access to lessons learned for many projects, not just here in Nova Scotia, but across the country and around the world. Now, of course, they cannot point out the projects that they're using for proprietary reasons, but they can take the lessons learned, and they have information that isn't publicly available, and they have that information that they can then take, and they can go ahead and start to put together an idea of what is the best way to procure. So in this particular case, P3 was chosen. And P3 was chosen predominantly because it allows for the long-term maintenance of the facility as well. So, and I think, that's probably a point that people don't think about a lot, is that it costs money to build something, it costs more to operate it. And so when you operate it in a way that replenishes and refreshes the building, then you have a better building when you get to the end of, say, 30 years. In this particular case, it's a 30-year contract. So what we're expecting is when we turn it over, like when it gets turned over to the DHW and NSH in order to own and operate, that the in-service contract will then kick in, and that building in 30 years' time will have the normal sort of 30-year wear and tear, but it will be a building that's still usable, a building that we can continue to provide service, if that makes sense, or make the decision on what we want to do in 30 years' time. And I would not presuppose anything on that front. So we rely on consultants who are professionals in this area to provide us advice on how to do that. With that comes their lessons learned. And again, not just lessons learned on one project, but from around the world. There's something new that's evolving in the P3 space across the country, and it's called a collaborative P3. And it looks like what we've just gone through. You get down to one bidder, and then with that one bidder, you work really hard to make sure that you get the right product, on the right scope, right price, right timetable. It saves time in the end because when you have two bidders under the P3, they come up with a proposal, you pick the one that you think is best, and then you start to customize it. And that isn't Nova Scotia, that's everywhere, because there'll be little things that they'll have interpreted that may have big effect with those user groups that we were talking about that say, well, you know what, it's nice, but we need the sink over here. So now we've got to change it, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I see him signaling, so.
MLA Taggart.
Yeah, I want to get another quick question. It's kind of more like, I think, to maybe the deputy or Miss Oldfield there. So as I understand it, you know, I don't know all the history, but you know, this project had been announced and was going to be built, and just kind of was, I don't know, in limbo or whatever for some time. Then we went to, or whoever went to work at it, and chose a different way forward. And I'm sure there's things you've seen since, you know, you started that process. But I'm wondering about, you know, are you happy with, you know, the path you've chosen? Can you give us some examples of where we've benefited, that sort of thing, as you've recognized the new, you know, needs and, you know, requirements of modern day healthcare?
Karen Oldfield?
Sure, I'll kick us off. The space, if I can use that term, is changing so quickly. So let's take technology. So the kinds of things that would go inside the hospital, inside either an inpatient room or a surgery or the diagnostic imaging equipment, it is changing so quickly with the onset of artificial intelligence. So let's take a bed, for example. We have beds at West Hants that are, how would I easily explain it? They have a Bluetooth capability.
Smart beds.
Smart beds, thank you. Smart beds. But they have a capability that has enabled an early detection, if you like, of pressure wounds. And we have successfully installed X beds, and through the period of testing, 0 pressure wounds. Now, that's wonderful, and I wish every bed was like it across the entire province. It is going to take a lot of time to be able to, you know, obtain, fund, and replace beds, even though I'm leaning on Mr. Spinney as much as possible. That's just a small example, but such an important one. So to answer the question, all of these things are happening. So in a way, we benefit from change and the fact that other builds across the country, I'm thinking of Ottawa in particular, the Ottawa Hospital. I'm thinking of Sick Kids, Sunnybrook, and so forth in Ontario, where yes, we can learn from the lessons they have gone through, and we do. And I speak regularly to my colleagues, CEOs of the other hospitals to learn the lessons. Derek would speak to his, but also, you know, our builders would speak to, well, they're the builders too. So they certainly have learned the school of hard knocks, if I could put it that way. And so, you know, collectively, we're able to take the benefit of the learnings and apply. And for me personally, it's really looking forward to make sure that we are putting the technology of the future into these hospitals and training the people and the staff of the future to operate these pieces of equipment rather than looking over our shoulder backwards.
MLA Taggart. Okay, order please. We'll go back to MLA LaChance, and we have 11 minutes in the second round.
Great, thank you so much. You mentioned just a couple of moments ago the issue of maintenance. So the $7.4 billion costs includes $2.9 billion over 30 years for maintenance. Can you break this down with us? How was that number arrived at, and are there things outside of what's in place that the province will have to cover? Are there maintenance costs that could occur outside of the $2.9 billion?
I recognize Mr. Benoit.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. So I think it's really important to start out by saying that the 2.9, as the MLA Lachance has mentioned, is over 30 years. It's not linear, so it's not, you can't just divide it by 30 and say, okay, that's the cost per year, because as the building ages, there'll be more things that need to get replaced than others, and so the money will get spent in a non-linear fashion based on the actual real-world events and what's occurring at the time in the facility. The facility we expect, as I'd mentioned before, to be in as good a shape as it was on day one, with the exception of, say, 30 years of wear and tear. There are numerous things that are inside the contract, and therefore it would be, you know, that they would be required in order to replace them. One of the advantages of having this type of arrangement is that maintenance costs are often driven by what's installed in the capital. And so if you pick, and just if I could use a very simple example, if you pick you know, a certain widget that costs 20 cents over one that costs 40 cents, it's cheaper to build, but you may have to replace that widget 16 times a day or, you know, a week or something like that. The arrangement that we have means that we're going to get that balance of quality and cost in the initial build, which will then allow the facility to operate as we would expect it and as we intended it to do throughout those 30 years.
I recognize MLA Lachance.
Well, maybe I have more questions about maintenance, so maybe I'll start my questions and then others will have a chance to jump in. Can you table with the committee the analysis that was done to come up with the $2.9 billion maintenance amount? And can you also provide publicly the information about what would cause maintenance costs, or what we might consider a maintenance cost, to fall outside of what's being covered in the contract? And I'm also wondering, so let's say it's built, as you've said, you know, so well that, I mean, maybe it doesn't require $2.9 billion worth of maintenance over the 30 years. Will the province still have to pay the full amount?
Mr. Benoit? Or is that right?
Yes. Oh, okay. Sorry. Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the question. So sorry, if you could just, there was a list there. I was trying to write it down. Maintenance costs that fall outside the other parts.
MLA Lachance?
Can you table the analysis with the committee that shows how the $2.9 billion was decided upon? Can you provide to the committee what might fall outside of that agreement contractually? And if $2.9 billion worth of maintenance is not required within the 30 years of the contract, will the province still have to pay the full amount of $2.9 billion?
Mr. Benoit.
Okay, thank you for the question and the additional clarification. So the contract, or the proposal, the bid that was submitted, was for both a build and a maintenance component. And so there were no specific direct, you know, negotiations, if I can say it that way, over maintenance. It was over the entire bid proposal. And so the team needed to talk about both the capital component and the operating component. That money really represents the money that the province would spend if we were to just maintain it ourselves. There's no, you know, there's...
Order, please.
Okay.
MLA Lachance.
Do apologize, Mr. Benoit, but we really just don't have a lot of time. So to be clear, I guess I'm really curious, is there a basis for that $2.9 billion? And what was outlined within it? And if it doesn't cost $2.9 billion, does the province still have to pay the full amount?
Mr. Volcko, is that, or, yeah?
Thank you. And thank you for the question. That's where we landed. When we talk about a fixed price or lump sum contract and a fixed time period, In this particular P3, it was for the design, build cost, financing, and operation. So I'll be the first to admit that operation of a facility like this is not my expertise. However, based on the design decisions that were made and the requirements manual that we followed, we're going to have a facility that has a certain amount of maintenance. As Mr. Benoit tried to point out, the maintenance is not over and above what the province would normally pay. It's just being paid in a different fashion. So to answer your question, if there's an underrun, is there money going back to the province? The answer is no, not to my knowledge. However, if there is an overrun, say there's a faulty elevator and it breaks down, the province also doesn't pay for that. The consortium pays for that. So there's no benefit, but there's no pain, no gain to the province. We've got the full number.
Thank you. And I will just reiterate that the MLA Lachance has asked for a number of documents to be tabled, and the clerk has made note of that. So we'll look forward to receiving those. MLA Lachance?
And so will, as that money is spent, the $2.9 billion, will that be publicly accounted for? Will that be provided in a transparent fashion to the public?
Mr. Benoit?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the question. Yes, the short answer to that is yes, that it'll be accounted for. To Mr. Volko's point, there are provisions inside the contract as well that apply penalties. So if the elevator, and I'll just use his example, if the elevator is not operational for a certain period of time, then we actually will charge the consortium a fee that the province will then get for the period of time that it's not available. And those are all predetermined, those were all negotiated out into the contract. But again, it's all one big contract.
MLA Lachance.
Sure. I'm just going to jump for the last couple of minutes that I have to a more immediate consequence of the QE2 redevelopment. And, you know, my understanding is that we've known since the discussion started about the rebuild that there would be a deficit of parking spots during the QE2 redevelopment. And then at the same time, there was a policy or political decision to mandate for free parking at all hospitals in Nova Scotia. And so I guess I'm wondering what happened that we weren't ready for this. You know, I heard from lots of healthcare workers who come to Halifax, Little Sable Island to work, and who had done that for many, many years, and then were really troubled in terms of getting to work on time, finding affordable parking. You know, it really has thrown folks for a real loop. So I'm wondering, how did we get to that day one of all free parking? We knew there was a deficit, and then we had a crisis. What happened there?
Mr. Spinney.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And so the first thing I would say is to express empathy for exactly what you said. When you're trying to get to work, life is busy, and the last thing you need to do is figure out kind of where you're parking and creating a lot of uncertainty. And that's exactly what our patients were dealing with too. And so at the Victoria General, for instance, if you went there midday, you would see patients circling within the lot trying to find a spot, creating angst on how they were going to get in an already stressful situation, and conceivably at times even meaning they couldn't get to their appointment on time. So at the same time, we were intending and trying to have those spots reserved for patients. So if you were to go in there, you'd see a sign, for instance, patient-only parking, et cetera. And what we didn't fully realize was the number of staff who were in fact parking there and paying the $14.50 a day. And so that was probably the largest learning for us when we went to this free parking, because we didn't actually change anything as far as the perspective on where people could park. That parking was for patients, it was still for patients, nothing was changing, but yet now we had a lot of staff that weren't able to park. So what we did was quickly pivot on that because obviously we're trying to make sure that both patients and providers are getting the best experience that they can actually get. So the first win out of this was that patients were actually getting to their appointments on time for free. And so you were seeing not that circling in the parking lot, which is beneficial for everybody. And so if we had patient representation here today, we'd be hearing about the success of that for them. We then quickly moved to figure
Order,
out
please. Apologize for the interruption. I'm going to recognize MLA Mumbercat.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks to everyone here today. I think I'll start off with, through you, Madam Chair, that there's a lot of questions from all committee members around the contract and the cost, and you know, I can appreciate not all of that information is here, but I am requesting that the full contract be tabled here to public accounts, and I think that would give all committee members the opportunity to go through it. So I don't know if that's really a question, but I'm requesting that's actually tabled, the full contract.
So, Madam Clerk, you have that on the list? Thank you. Yeah, MLA Mumbercat.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that for the public, they get to see the full contract in its entirety, and that would give the committee members some clarity on some of the questions that were asked today, and for Nova Scotians, because as we know, this project has skyrocketed really in the cost, and for me, it kind of impacts. I have a real question around, you know, we're talking about, you know, the central zone, but like ultimately when a project becomes to a point where the expense increases as much as this has, it's probably impacting government decisions around other redevelopments. And specifically, I want to talk about Cape Breton for a second. So we have construction happening right now with the regional. We have construction happening on the north side. But to me, I'm not hearing anything on Glace Bay and New Waterford. And these were big pieces of the redevelopment in Cape Breton. So my first question, Madam Speaker, through you to the committee, you know, based on the cost that this is now required to build this project here, is Glace Bay and Waterford still on target to be complete?
Mr. Benoit.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. Really exciting what's going on in Cape Breton. We've got lots of activity there, not just on the healthcare front, but right across the province in terms of building. That brings with it those challenges of, do we have enough people? And so we're working, and just re-highlight the equity, diversity, inclusivity engagement work that we're doing up there in order to attract more apprentices. The regional on the north side is already talked about, some excellent work going on there, and things are on schedule, on track on both of those sites. New Waterford remains on track insofar as we've got the, I know that the question is about healthcare, but for me, it's the whole site. So we just finished and opened up the school in New Waterford, opened up in September, and then of course the medical center opened up as well. Yes.
Order, please. Thank you. You're beginning to read the body language here. And we're going to go to Karen Oldfield, please.
Thanks. Just to supplement that, thank you. Nothing is static, as we know, and so many things have changed in the healthcare arena over the past 3-4 years. So our primary care, where we deliver it, how we deliver it. So if we take a look at the new CBU Medical School, there was an opportunity to do some work with Marconi. So all of a sudden, Marconi becomes a provincial asset which is in play that we can look at. What can we do with Marconi? I don't know if you've been through it recently, but it is just beautiful and massive space. The hallways are almost they're half the size of the chamber. So we look at something that's already built. What can we do with it? And so, you know, these are the kinds of things that we're looking at now, and determining what that therefore means for the remaining builds.
Emily Mumbercat.
So I take that as there may be changes to the original plan for Glace Bay in Waterford under the redevelopment.
Karen Oldfield.
I don't think that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we're looking at it, and if a decision was ever made, then that would be a decision we would communicate. So we have to look at things like that. It's not smart not to look at a provincial asset that is being used for the medical school. We now have the medical school operating starting in September. So these are changes that have to be looked at in terms of an overall system.
Emily Mumbercat.
Thank you, and I appreciate the feedback. I just think that people are asking questions at home, and it ties into the overall expenditures that the government is going to spend when it comes to this development and how it impacts everything else. So, for me, I'm not really getting a clear answer on. There was an initial plan for redevelopment. North Sydney is under construction. That facility's there. The laundry facility is being part of that. These were heavy conversations with some of the same decision makers that are here at committee today. So my question, I'll continue to ask this question to the minister and others that I'm not getting a clear sense that part of the redevelopment, in which I know they're trying to recruit medical professionals into these communities. I think that we need to be really clear that Glace Bay and Waterford are still part of that redevelopment. What is healthcare going to look like in those communities? And I've asked this question to government and government representatives, elected representatives, who haven't given me a clear answer on what that step is. So if I would encourage that the Department of Health really be clear about that. You know what I mean? People in these communities are asking, doctors are looking at these communities saying, this is where I want to set up. There's new facilities that were planned. They're probably being, this is probably being talked about as they try to make decisions of where to settle their families. So, I'm asking that question based on what's the topic today, but I know that when you see the cost increase that much, it's got to have an impact on the government decisions around what is happening at other facilities. So I'll stop at that. The other question I do have, and I was reading an article, and I can table it, Madam Chair, I just got to get it printed off, around, these projects are massive. And you can run into problems, as we all know. You know what I mean? New construction, a sprinkler goes in a building, there's a massive flood, all of those things take part. And I'm reading, there's an article around floors that are not straight at a hospital in Toronto. And I guess my question through, Madam Chair, to the government is, what protections are in place for the taxpayer in the event that you're going through construction, there's a flood, there's a design flaw. What protections are there in place for the government so they're not incurring those costs and ultimately they can stay out of court?
Who would like to answer that? Mr. Benoit? Oh, okay,
Mr.
sorry.
Martin to start.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the question. I can't speak about the issue in Toronto because it's a subject of an active dispute. But what I will, I'll respond to your question about what's in the contract, what protections exist in this contract. Mr. Benoit has already highlighted the fact that the contract contains a deductions regime, right, where the service payment that you make to our consortium is abated if rooms or parts of the facility are unavailable for any reason. So that would include as a result of a flood and so on. It also specifies response and rectification times for any of those sorts of failures, and sets out a regime of penalties associated with missing those deadlines.
Emily Mumbercat.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the answer to that. That's important. And that's why I'm requesting through you, Madam Chair, that the contract in its entirety is tabled before public accounts. So, we can answer these questions that were being asked by Nova Scotians every day around these projects. Hospitals, one example. I've seen this in other projects where you'll have situations where new builds come, something happens, You know what I mean? Who's on the hook to cover those costs? These are important conversations, especially when you're getting into, you know, a project of this size is historic. You know what I mean? When it comes to the size of the build here in the province. So I reiterate, if we can have that contract tabled, that will give all of us an opportunity to read that. I only have a minute and a half left, so I'll go back into kind of the capital region. It goes back to my question around the Cape Breton redevelopment, the fact that, you know, our change is coming to Glace Bay and Waterford when it comes to that project. But is the committee, and maybe it's for you, Mr. Benoit, are you confident that this is going to come in on time and on budget?
Sorry, MLA Member, which are you talking about?
The project here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Benoit.
Thank you for the, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question and the clarification, because I was going to ask the same thing. So as it relates to the HIEP, firm fixed schedule and price, so yes, it'll come in.
Clear as a bell. MLA Member.
Confident, that's a good answer. So it's important, yeah. And so I only have 50 seconds left, so I'll just, I'll say, you know, we've talked about trades, we've talked about, you know, the challenge maybe that comes around the workforce, but we're all working through it. Through you to Mr. Benoit, is he confident that he's going to have all the trade people in place to keep the project on time?
Mr. Benoit.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. I guess I would just caveat my last answer with, you know, all things being equal. I don't have a crystal ball, so I couldn't imagine what might arise. But I can tell you that the team is on it every single day. So if there's something that's arising, if they see something possibly arising, if they think something might arise, they're already working on a solution. They're already working with our partners in order to try and make sure that it either doesn't materialize, it gets mitigated, or we have a contingency around it or through whatever the challenge is.
Order, please. I will recognize MLA Wong.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here. I know, you know, this is a massive project. I can't even imagine. So I know that Mr. Spinney, you were talking about some of the transition plans that are some of the transitions that have already happened, as in moving, you know, blood collection out of the Victoria General, trying to fortify things that are existing there. And it came to mind the processes that people go through when they move from one house to a new house, and the planning and the stress and all of those things. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about some of the other transition things that you have in mind. So I'm just wondering if you could discuss the transition plan a little bit, because there are people, there is equipment, there are patients, there are processes, and all of those things. So I'm just wondering if you can enlighten us on some of the things that you have in mind.
Mr. Spinney, please.
Thank you for the question, and it's a great comparison to your home move, for instance. There's a lot that goes into that. So, and that's the human aspect of it, which is really important to us at Nova Scotia Health, is to make sure that we're taking into account how are people going to be felt through this process. So one of the things that will strike you when you walk through the West Bedford transition to care facility, or transition to community, facility, is that you really feel like it was built for people, and then healthcare was added. Whereas in our traditional facilities, you walk in and you feel like you're in a healthcare facility, and then we seem to have realized that people were there, so we put a pretty picture on the wall. So it's kind of the exact opposite, where we're getting to, finally, to patient-centric. When you walk into that facility, you see a bell card at the front door like you would see at a very fancy hotel that's all shined up. So people actually feel like they're the ones that are at the center of everything that's actually happening. And we've been able to have 68 patients there now. So the first phase is completely open, working very well. So in order for that to happen, there is a lot of planning that goes into it. And this is where we also rely on private partners, in this case Shanix, to be able to deliver on that. So we look at it from end to end, not only in what are we moving out, but how's it going to land on the other side. So this is, I think, a good example of what Ms. Oldfield mentioned earlier about things change. They've always changed. They're always going to change. They certainly have over the last 3 years. So as we look at all of our master planning, how can we do things differently? The question about costs going up, will that have an impact on other things? It absolutely does. However, what doesn't change is our commitment to making sure that the healthcare needs of Nova Scotians are met. It may mean that we need to do it a little differently. If you had have thought 5 years ago, will we have a transition to community facility where we're going to have 178 people being taken care of in a more appropriate way? Nobody probably in this room would have said yes to that, but yet here we are. That facility will have almost the same number of beds as the Dartmouth General, and that's just one example. So when we do look outside of the city, these cost implications do have an impact. They absolutely do. But this is where we need to do things differently. This is where, and Ms. Oldfield said this as well, we need long-term care and Nova Scotia Health and primary care, the health homes, everything coming together to serve the communities in which we live. So I think that is going to hopefully answer the question, but Ms. Oldfield would like to add too.
Karen Oldfield, please.
Thank you. Derek's right. It is about people, and we've talked a lot today about the skilled labor workforce with respect to construction, but we also have to be mindful of the additional staff and workforce that will be required around not just the central zone, but the entire province to meet the demands of the patients that are calling at these newly renovated facilities. And in that regard, you know, like we really have to work backwards all the way to the community college or our universities, excuse me, or immigration, our colleges of nursing, of physicians, and so forth. It's the whole gamut. And so the working together to plan out what the future looks like is, of course, this redevelopment is a massive component of it, but there's so many other things that go into it and have to be thought through, planned for, and done. So I just want to remind the committee that when we talk about transition, it's not just, you know, taking a person from the VG and putting them in an ambulance and taking them down the street to a new bed at the QE2 HI site. That's actually the easy part. The hard part is everything else that we're talking about here today. And the transition, it's already being planned like to infinite, tiny, weeny little details. And it's going to take all of that time to plan for it properly.
And we'll go to Mr. Benoit for a moment.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. And I just wanted to add on to what CEO Oldfield and Mr. Spinney has said. Sometimes where you end is important how you start. And so the team at Build has an operational readiness team that actually facilitates and helps and starts the planning that CEO Oldfield was talking about to make sure that we don't just deliver a building, but we deliver a building that's operational on, you know, for the NSH. And it isn't just about the patients, it's also about the staff that work in it. And we most recently employed that model for the Bayers Lake COC, which had a seamless transition to open. The staff had amazing things to say about the work that we did, but it all starts in the background, and it starts today, and it will continue right through the rest of the build. I think, you know, what I've heard from citizens on the street and other places is that they are very impressed with that facility. They're very impressed not just with the way it was built and the way that they're welcomed, but also with the staff in it. And all of that starts because we made sure they were ready to take on the role of operating that building.
MLA McLeod.
Thank you, Chair. We've talked about the transition. I'm talking about the transition after 30 years of operations. So I think this facility is set to open in 2031. So we're looking at 2061. I'm sure in 2061, you know, technology is going to be different. There's going to be innovations in healthcare. During your planning stage, what efforts or how much thought has gone into future-proof this building so that in 30 plus years down the road, it's still useful to Nova Scotians?
Mr. Benoit.
So thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the question. And I'm not sure, there may be other members on the panel that would like to add in. You know, it's actually a very complex problem that you bring up. Like, how do you get a building build it to open in 2031, and then make sure that it can operate in 2061. And because the model we're using, maybe even beyond that, because the building could still be in good shape. Part of that is about what you do for innovation up front. Part of that is about responding to the needs as they become known or as technology changes. And so working with our partners, you know, the team is very focused on what kind of innovations can we put in. Do we need to have, and some of the barriers with infrastructure often is, well, the walls, or, you know, if we could have opened this wall a little bit, then we'd have more space. Or if we could try this, you know, and I'll use modular as one example because it's topical. Modular lends itself to a little bit more flexibility because you're able to put stuff in, take stuff out. What kind of modularity could we get into this build? I don't want to leave people with the idea that you can build a traditional building and then somehow modularize it, and that's not a reality today. Maybe someday in the future, who knows? But there are things that we can do, and there are choices that we can make, and we're having those discussions now to be able to try and inject that innovation, and therefore, you know, help with that problem. You're never going to be perfect, and you're never going to, you're never going to meet the need exactly. But at the same way, maybe there are things that we can do that help both today and into the future to continue to operate the building.
Karen Oldfield.
Just a quick addition. To add to what Mr. Benoit has said, you know, a car today has more computerization than Apollo 13. Same with elevators, same with heating systems, same with every single system that goes into that new build. It's highly technical, highly computerized. So one upside of having Plenary deal with the operational costs here is that their experts are going to be fresh every single month, every day, every week. Whereas, you know, though I dearly love our facility and maintenance staff, and they do such great work and they have their fingers in a lot of dikes, that is not the kind of training that they have. And so, yes, we will have to maintain our own skill set too, but there will be a difference, and I think that will be a great help as well. So we'll be able to learn from it, but we are going to make sure that you know, the right training is dealing with the right equipment.
Order, please. MLA McLeod with 40 seconds.
Ms. Oldfield, you mentioned earlier today about pressure beds. I may have missed something. Are all the new beds in this facility going to be pressure beds?
Mr. Spinney? Or Karen Oldfield?
Thanks. I would love it. We will do our best, but we're undetermined at this time. But, you know, it's the bed of the future, and not only is it just for pressure wounds, but, you know, there are beds that have X number of data points, so we can monitor so many things that are happening to a patient, and that's an incredible piece of.
Order, please. The time for questions has elapsed. I will invite our witnesses, Mr. Benoit, Deputy MacKenzie, or Karen Oldfield, to give final comments if you so choose. Mr. Benoit.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I would just conclude by saying, you know, thank you very much for the questions. These are really important questions. These are really important aspects that Nova Scotians, I know, want to hear about, and so appreciate the opportunity to respond to them. And, you know, I just reiterate that this is a really positive step forward for the province and for care in this province. Thank you.
Okay, Karen Oldfield, please.
Thank you, and thanks for having this on the agenda and for enabling us to take a few minutes to talk about it. I think it's fantastic. I love where we're going. I would encourage every one of the committee members, come and see some of these new infrastructure projects if you have not, like West Bedford, like Bayers Lake, some of the things that we're doing. I mean, it's phenomenal, and it's great progress, and we should all be proud of it. So, you know, there's no nothing to hide. Basically, come and see, and then that way you can share and tell your constituents and all Nova Scotians. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, folks. You are free to leave, and we're going to continue on with a few pieces of committee business. So we're not going to take a break. We have to barrel on through today. Okay. First piece of committee business. We have a number of pieces of correspondence that you all have on your desks. The first one is the Auditor General response to the committee request from last week. You'll see it, I think it's on the top page. So I'm wondering if there's any discussion. Basically, yeah, is there any discussion on this piece of correspondence from the Auditor General? No. Seeing none? Great. Nova Scotia Power, information requested from the June 4th meeting. Is there any discussion on that? MLA Timmins, please. Pardon me?
To the letter that I was requesting? Or are we have more before
okay,
that?
Pause just 1 second.
Yep.
It's later on the agenda. So anything on the letter from Judith Ferguson? No? Okay. Next we have the email from Deputy Minister LaFlèche regarding June 18th appearance. So just to reiterate, the Deputy Minister was the approved witness, and now we have a letter from the Deputy Minister asking for him to be excused and replaced with Associate Deputy Peter Geddes. And also suggesting that Mr. Benoit, who we've just heard from, be replaced with Donna Burke. So is there any discussion on that? MLA Lachance.
You know, while we definitely want the right people in the room for the discussion, I would really argue that we need to have Deputy Minister LaFlèche and Mr. Benoit for that meeting, and so I don't agree with this request. I can talk more about why, but maybe I'll let other people weigh in first.
Is there any other discussion? MLA Taggart?
Yeah, I'm just not sure. I think this is an offer to bring more informed people in. I don't see where there's an issue with that. I don't know how many people we have invited to that meeting. I don't have it in front of me, but
it's hard to hear you, MLA Taggart.
I'm sorry. I'm kind of. I just think that this is an offer to supplement, to send people in that can answer the questions, as opposed to someone who will have to say, well, I'll have to get back to you on that. So I support this. I actually think that maybe there should be more of this. We pick our witnesses because we think they're the people that can best answer the question. But when they give us advice that says, no, I'm not the best person, this is the best person, I think we should consider that advice at least. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I will just get in on this conversation quickly and say that there's, I think, two parts of this. Number one, whenever we invite our witnesses, we make it very clear that they can bring other people from their offices. So, for instance, if we invite Deputy LaFlèche, then Associate Deputy Geddes is 100% welcome and encouraged to attend. The issue I think that we might come across is that if we have the people that he suggested and don't have the supervisors, the deputy minister, where the chips fall, as it were, then we may get into the same situation where somebody can't answer the question because their supervisor or their I forget what the word I'm looking for is present. So I just want to put that out there. I'm going to go back to MLA Lachance, and then I'll hear from MLA Timmins. MLA Lachance.
Hi, yeah, just to clarify, I mean, people can bring a whole back row of resources to these meetings, but, I think this is a really important issue. So, we are following up on a May 2019 report where 5 of 7 recommendations were not completed in 2025. The Auditor General's report really stressed that these delays were potentially very problematic in terms of the safety of Nova Scotia's infrastructure. So I, the current responses from government have been quite vague in terms of either stating this year, 2025, or not being provided. So I feel strongly that, great, bring other people, but that we need the most senior officials here for public accounts.
Senior was the word I was looking for, MLA Lachance. Thank you so much. MLA Timmins.
I'm okay with the change. The reason why is because I think it's going to end up being delayed if the deputy minister is unable to attend, and it is a very important issue on the table as well. And also, we have an opportunity if there's questions that weren't able to be answered, we can also ask for it to be requested to the department to give to the clerk as well. So.
Thank you. Yeah, the clerk has just advised me that this is not an issue where the deputy minister cannot come. He's saying he would rather not come. He hasn't said that he's unable to make the meeting. If he was unable to make the meeting, we would just reschedule it. Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, we'll move on. Yeah, if we have no further discussion, then the agreement is that the decision stays the way it was, which is that Deputy LaFlèche does attend the meeting. If we're not going to have any further discussion, then we are agreeing that we would prefer, or we want Deputy Minister LaFlèche to attend the meeting and David Benoit to attend the meeting. Okay, MLA Wong.
And thank you, Chair. I believe that the Deputy Minister LaFlèche had said that the person that's going to replace him actually works on the ground more, has better information that he could provide us. So.
Heard. Yes, that is true. But what I think I've heard from other members of the committee is that it would be great to have the person he's recommending and him attend. So essentially, committee, if we want to change the witnesses as they have been approved, then we need a motion. So if yes, MLA McLeod?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, can I make a motion to amend the witnesses as per the email?
I'd prefer if you just read it out clearly of who you want to see at the meeting.
Okay, Associate Deputy Peter Geddes and Executive Director Donna Burke with Build NS.
Okay, so the motion is to amend the witness list to include Donna Burke and Peter Geddes, or to replace Mr. LaFlèche and Mr. Benoit with Donna Burke and Peter Geddes. MLA McLeod.
It would be to replace them.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion about the motion? MLA Lachance.
I think, clearly my position has not changed. I think that this is the Public Accounts Committee, that we're following up on audit recommendations that are, have not been followed over the medium term, have not been implemented. And, I think, the outstanding recommendations include developing a complete inventory of known and potentially contaminated sites, and implementing a risk-based approach to prioritize contaminated sites for restoration. And I think all Nova Scotians should be concerned about the ever-increasing costs of contaminated sites in the budget. And I think it's, I think communities actually have a right to have this conversation, to know what to expect in that regard. I think, we've had people back. We've reviewed the audit follow-up on these issues, and it still is rather vague and uncertain. And I don't actually think that that's acceptable. And I do think that, I think it would be great if we want to ask the Associate Deputy and the Executive Director to come, but I don't see the rationale for not having Deputy Minister LaFlèche here. I mean, another example would be even today, in a sense, Deputy Minister MacKenzie and Associate Deputy Minister Gatien didn't speak a lot, but this is part of their portfolio, and it was important that they were here. They are ultimately responsible for the departments responsible for implementing the audit recommendations. And so I just don't understand why these seem like great additions, but I feel very strongly, and no one's explained to me why you wouldn't have the deputy heads of the organizations here for this conversation. Perhaps there's something I'm not aware of, but maybe some of the members who support that change and who made the motion could explain to me why we wouldn't want the person ultimately responsible for the department in the room to be part of the conversation.
I'm going to go to MLA Mombercat, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And through you to the Auditor General, maybe if the Auditor General would like to comment on whether the current slate of witnesses should be here at the Deputy Minister level. If I could get her right, because this is the Auditor General's report. So through you, I'd like to hear from the Auditor General.
Ms. Adair.
Thank you. Well, I guess what I'm thinking about is the precedent-setting nature of this change. Best practice for public accounts committees is that the deputy minister is the one ultimately responsible, and has always been required to appear. And I know Ms. Langell goes to great lengths to make sure she schedules the meetings so that the deputy ministers are available. And as been said, other people are welcome to come and the deputy decides who to bring with them. But ultimately, this is the decision of the committee. But I would just say, think of the precedent-setting nature of this decision.
Thank you. We'll go to MLA Taggart. MLA Taggart, then Mombercat, then Lachance. MLA Taggart.
So I need some clarification on what MLA Lachance was referring to as vague. I've heard that 2 or 3 times. I'm not sure what's vague here. I think it's a pretty straightforward question, but I wonder what I'm missing.
Okay, MLA Lachance, do you want to address that?
Well, I mean, I think just to build on the information provided by the Auditor General, the expectation of public accounts is the deputy head of a department is here and accountable for the operations and...
Order, please. The time has elapsed for the meeting. So we will meet again next week, and the motion has not carried. Sorry, the motion was not carried. It's been adjourned before the motion could be voted on. You're right. Thanks.